3 weeks had passed since the crew first arrived at Outpost Delta 9, and what started as wild hope was slowly turning into something that looked almost like a plan. Rico Martinez had barely slept during those weeks, spending every waking moment crawling through the piles of discarded equipment with the intensity of a treasure hunter. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered to himself for the 100th time, sitting cross-legged on the ground with components scattered around him like puzzle pieces. But this time, something was different. This time, the confusion in his voice was mixed with excitement. Luna Chung found him there at dawn, surrounded by what looked like the aftermath of a small explosion. Power cores were stacked in neat rows, their energy readings displayed on a dozen different monitors. Cable bundles snaked across the ground like electronic vines, connecting devices that had never been designed to work together. "Rico, have you been here all night again?" Luna asked, stepping carefully around a particularly intimidating-looking device that hummed with barely contained energy. "Look at this," Rico said, ignoring her question completely. He pointed to a display showing energy output readings that made Luna's eyes widen. "This Regelium power core puts out twice the energy of anything in the current fleet, but the Defense Force classified it as unstable because it doesn't play nice with their standard systems." He gestured to another device, this one sleek and silver with an almost mirror-like finish. "And this Andromedan shield generator can create defensive fields that bend space itself, but again, incompatible with human technology." Luna knelt down beside him, following his gaze to a third component that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black crystal. "What's that one?" "Centauri Navigation Array," Rico said, his voice growing more animated. "It doesn't just plot courses through space, it can predict gravitational anomalies up to 3 days in advance, but the bureaucrats said it was too complex for standard military use." The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together in Luna's mind. "You're saying each piece of our junk was rejected because it didn't fit with existing technology?" "Exactly." Rico jumped to his feet, gesturing wildly at the equipment around them. "The Defense Force wants everything to be simple, standardized, predictable. But what if predictable isn't what we need? What if we built something that used the best features of each technology, even if they were never meant to work together?" By noon, word of Rico's discovery had spread throughout the small outpost. Maya Patel arrived carrying an armload of weapons, components that looked like they belonged in 6 different centuries. Alex Thompson followed with navigation charts that he'd been studying since their arrival. "Show them the power coupling test," Luna urged, her excitement growing. Rico activated a device that looked like it had been assembled by someone with a serious case of creative insanity. 3 different power cores hummed to life, their energy readings climbing steadily. Instead of the explosive failure everyone expected, the readings stabilized at levels that exceeded anything in the current military specifications. "That's impossible," Maya breathed, staring at the display. "That's what they said about my engine design," Rico replied with a grin. "Turns out impossible just means nobody's been crazy enough to try it yet." Alex spread out his star charts on a makeshift table, pointing to routes that crisscrossed the galaxy in patterns that seemed almost artistic. "I've been analyzing the capabilities of our navigation equipment. If Rico's right about the power output, and if we can integrate the Centauri prediction algorithms with the Regelian energy systems," he paused, double-checking his calculations, "we could build a ship that doesn't just travel faster than anything in the current fleet. We could build a ship that thinks faster, reacts faster, and adapts to threats in real time." Maya had been quietly examining the weapons components during this conversation, and now she looked up with an expression that was equal parts amazement and terror. "The weapon systems are the same story. We've got plasma cannons from the old Earth fleet, particle beams from the Vegan Alliance, and kinetic accelerators from the Tau Ceti Rebellion. None of them work with standard targeting systems, but..." She activated a targeting display that immediately began tracking imaginary threats with inhuman precision. "If we combine the targeting algorithms from all 3 civilizations, we get something that can lock onto multiple targets simultaneously while predicting their movement patterns." Commander Zara Knox had been watching this demonstration from the doorway, and now she stepped forward with a smile that was both proud and slightly worried. "So, what you're telling me is that our pile of incompatible junk could potentially outperform every ship in the Defense Force fleet." "Not potentially," Rico corrected. "Definitely. The question is whether we're skilled enough to make it happen." The next few hours turned into an impromptu planning session that felt more like a group of kids designing their dream fort than military personnel developing weapons technology. But as they talked, sketched, and argued, something remarkable began to emerge. Their ship wouldn't be built according to any existing blueprint. Instead, it would be a completely new approach to spacecraft design, one that prioritized adaptability over standardization, innovation over regulation. "Traditional ships are built around a single core technology," Rico explained, sketching diagrams on every available surface. "Everything else is designed to support that core. But what if we built a ship around multiple cores that support each other?" Luna grabbed a marker and began adding to his sketches. The navigation system could feed data directly to the weapons. Targeting. The shield generators could share power with the engines during high-speed maneuvers. And the whole thing could be controlled by a distributed intelligence system that learns from every encounter, Alex added. "Instead of following pre-programmed responses, it adapts in real time." Maya was already pulling apart weapons components with the enthusiasm of someone who had found the perfect project. "We'll need to completely redesign the targeting matrix. And the power distribution systems? And probably the entire control interface. So basically, we need to reinvent everything," Zara said. "Pretty much," Rico agreed cheerfully as the sun set on their fourth week at Outpost Delta 9. The crew found themselves looking at their collection of discarded equipment with completely new eyes. What had once seemed like an impossible pile of incompatible junk now looked like the components of something extraordinary. They had no official authorization for what they were planning. No budget, no support from command. No backup plan if things went wrong. What they had was expertise, determination, and the kind of creative freedom that only comes when you have absolutely nothing left to lose. "One question," Luna said as they stood around Rico's increasingly complex array of interconnected components. "What do we call this thing we're building?" Zara looked out at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Something that rises from what others thought was worthless. Something that proves second chances can be more powerful than first impressions." She turned back to her crew, her family, really, and smiled. "We'll call it Phoenix Rising. Because that's exactly what we're going to do." The vision was taking shape. Now came the hard part, making it real. 6 months into their impossible project, Outpost Delta 9 had transformed from a forgotten junkyard into something that looked like organized chaos. Sparks flew constantly from welding stations scattered across the compound. The sound of hammering. Metal echoed through the thin atmosphere at all hours. And in the center of it all, rising like a metal mountain, was the skeleton of something that had never existed before. The Phoenix Rising didn't look like any ship in the military databases. Where normal vessels were built with clean lines and predictable shapes, their creation was a wild fusion of curves and angles that seemed to flow into each other like liquid metal. Rico had insisted on this organic design, claiming that traditional ship architecture was too rigid for the hybrid systems they were installing. "Hand me that plasma conduit," Maya called out from somewhere deep inside the ship's weapon systems. She had been working in the dark confines of the weapons bay for 3 days straight, connecting targeting systems that spoke completely different electronic languages. Her hands were covered in burns from electrical shorts, but her voice carried the satisfaction of someone solving an impossible puzzle. Luna emerged from a maintenance shaft looking like she had been wrestling with mechanical octopi. Her flight suit was torn in several places, and her hair was singed from yet another power coupling explosion. "The navigation array is finally talking to the engine controls," she announced triumphantly. "Only took 4 complete rewrites of the interface protocols." "And how many explosions?" asked Alex, looking up from his own pile of smoking electronics. "I stopped counting after 12, Luna admitted with a grin. The truth was, their project was failing as often as it succeeded. Every breakthrough was followed by 3 new problems they hadn't anticipated. Power systems that worked perfectly in isolation would overload when connected to other components. Software designed for one type of computer would crash spectacularly. When installed on alien hardware, Rico had filled 17 notebooks with calculations that looked more like abstract art than engineering diagrams. His latest creation was a power distribution system that required components to be installed in a precise sequence, with timing measured in microseconds. One mistake would send feedback through the entire ship's electrical system. The problem, he explained to anyone who would listen, is that we're not just building a ship. We're building a translator that helps 6 different technologies have a conversation they were never designed to have. 2 months earlier, they had suffered their worst setback yet. A cascade failure in the shield generator had sent a power surge through the entire framework, melting 3 weeks' worth of delicate circuitry in less than 10 seconds. The smell of burned electronics had lingered for days, and Mayao had actually cried when she saw her weapons targeting system reduced to slag. But instead of giving up, they had learned. Rico redesigned the power systems with built-in surge protectors. Maya rebuilt her targeting matrix with backup systems that could take over if the primary circuits failed. Alex created navigation protocols that could function even if half the computers went offline. We're not just building redundancy, Zara had told them during one of their evening planning sessions. We're building resilience. This ship won't just work despite its complexity, it'll work because of it. The breakthrough came during their 8th month of construction. Rico had been struggling with a seemingly impossible problem: how to make the Andromedan shield generators work with the Rigelium power cores without creating feedback loops that would tear the ship apart. He had tried everything conventional engineering could suggest: isolation circuits, frequency modulators, buffer systems. Nothing worked. The 2 technologies seemed fundamentally incompatible, like trying to mix oil and water. Then Luna made a suggestion that was so simple it was brilliant. What if we stopped trying to make them compatible and instead make them dependent? Instead of isolating the systems from each other, Rico began designing connections that turned their incompatibilities into strengths. The shield generator's energy fluctuations became input data for the power core's adaptive algorithms. The power core's variable output became the energy source that made the shield generator's space-bending effects possible. It's like teaching them to dance together, Rico explained as he watched the energy readings stabilize at levels that exceeded his wildest projections. They're not fighting each other anymore, they're supporting each other. Word of their success spread through the small outpost like wildfire. Crew members who had been assigned to other maintenance duties began volunteering their free time to help with the Phoenix Rising. The communications officer rewrote the ship's internal messaging systems. The medical technician designed a health monitoring system that could track the crew's vital signs during high-stress maneuvers. Even the base cook got involved, designing a food preparation system that could function under the extreme gravitational forces their hybrid engine was capable of generating. This isn't just our project anymore, Zara realized as she watched a dozen people working together to install the ship's final major component. It's become everyone's project. The Centauri navigation array was the last piece of the puzzle, and also the most challenging. Unlike the other systems which dealt with energy and matter, the navigation array processed pure information. It had to interface with every other system on the ship while maintaining the computational speed necessary for real-time space navigation. Alex had spent 3 months learning programming languages that hadn't been used outside the Centauri system for decades. The navigation array's operating system was unlike anything human technology had produced. It thought in probabilities rather than certainties, treating space navigation like a conversation with the universe itself. It's not predicting where objects will be, Alex explained as he fine-tuned the final interface connections. It's calculating where they want to be, based on gravitational preferences and stellar current patterns that we don't even have names for. The first successful systems test came on a morning when the outpost's twin suns aligned in a way that cast strange shadows across the compound. Rico activated the main power sequence while Luna monitored engine output and Maya tracked weapons. System readiness. Alex sat at the navigation console, his hands dancing across controls that responded to thoughts as much as touch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a giant taking its first breath, the Phoenix Rising came alive. Lights cascaded through the ship's corridors in patterns that seemed almost organic. The engine core hummed with harmonics that resonated through the hull like a song. Displays flickered to life throughout the vessel, showing information streams that flowed between systems like electronic rivers. "All systems are green, Luna," reported, her voice filled with amazement. "Power output is stable, navigation array is online. Weapon systems are responding to commands." Maya's targeting display lit up with practice scenarios, tracking imaginary threats with precision that made military-grade equipment look primitive. Targeting accuracy is, "This can't be right." It's showing hit probabilities over 99%. "It's right," Rico said quietly, staring at readings that confirmed everything they had hoped for. "We actually did it. We built something that works." But the real test was still to come. Making the ship function while docked was one thing. Making it fly was another challenge entirely. As they prepared for their first flight test, the crew of the Phoenix Rising knew they were about to find out if their impossible dream would soar or crash. The emergency alert that shattered the morning quiet at Outpost Delta 9 wasn't supposed to reach them. After all, they were officially forgotten, stationed at the edge of nowhere with equipment that barely qualified as functional. But when the Vorthan Empire launched their surprise attack on the Kepler station system, even the most remote listening posts picked up the distress signals. Commander Zara Knox stood in the communications center, watching incoming reports with growing alarm. The Galactic Defense Force's Third Fleet had been caught completely off guard. Their standardized tactics and predictable formations were being torn apart by Vorthan forces that seemed to anticipate every move. 23 ships destroyed in the first hour, reported the communications officer, his voice tight with disbelief. "The Vorthans are using some kind of adaptive warfare system. Every time our fleet tries a standard maneuver, they're already prepared for it." Rico Martinez burst into the room, still wearing the grease-stained coveralls that had become his uniform over the past 18 months. "Zara, we're getting a direct transmission from Fleet Command. They're asking about our operational status." Luna Xiang appeared behind him, her pilot's instincts already putting pieces together. "They want us to deploy, don't they? They want us to take the Phoenix Rising into actual combat." The official order came through an hour later. Admiral Harrison's face on the view screen looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 24 hours. "Commander Knox, I know your vessel is still experimental, but we're facing a crisis unlike anything we've encountered. The Vorthan forces are systematically destroying everything we send against them. We need something they haven't seen before." "With respect, Admiral," Zara replied carefully, "the Phoenix Rising has only completed basic systems testing. We've never taken her into combat conditions. Commander, we've lost over half the Third Fleet. Kepler Station is under direct assault. Civilian evacuation ships are trapped in the system with no protection." The Admiral's voice carried the weight of desperation. "You and your crew are our last hope." After the transmission ended, the crew of the Phoenix Rising gathered in their ship's main corridor. The vessel hummed around them with the quiet confidence of a predator at rest, but none of them had any illusions about what they were being asked to do. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Maya Patel said, checking her weapon systems one final time. "The most advanced fleet in the galaxy just got completely destroyed by an enemy that can predict every standard military tactic, and now they want us to face that same enemy with a ship we built from spare parts?" "That's about the size of it," Alex Thompson confirmed, his navigation displays already plotting the fastest route to Kepler Station. Travel time at maximum speed would be 18 hours. Assuming our engines don't explode on the way there. They Won't explode, Rico said with more confidence than he felt. Probably. The launch sequence for the Phoenix Rising was unlike anything in the standard military manual. Where normal ships had hundreds of pre-flight checks and safety protocols, their hybrid vessel required a delicate dance of timing and intuition. Rico monitored power flows that changed by the second. Luna prepared flight systems that responded to pilot intention as much as control input. Maya armed weapons that could configure themselves for threats they hadn't yet encountered. "All systems ready," Luna announced from the pilot's seat. Though I should mention that our flight computer just told me it's excited about finally getting to stretch its legs. The flight computer said what now? Zara asked. The Centauri navigation array is semi-sentient, Alex explained. It's been analyzing combat data from the Kepler system for the past 6 hours. I think it's developed some opinions about Vortham tactics. The Phoenix Rising lifted off from Outpost Delta 9 with none of the thunderous roar that accompanied traditional spacecraft launches. Instead, it rose silently, powered by energy systems that bent space around the ship rather than fighting against it. Within minutes, they had cleared the planet's atmosphere and engaged their hybrid faster-than-light drive, the journey to Kepler. Station gave them time to study enemy tactics and plan their approach. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The Vorthans weren't just using superior technology, they were using superior strategy. Their ships could analyze incoming threats and immediately adapt their formations to counter expected attack patterns. "Look at this battle recording," Maya said, highlighting tactical data on the main display. The moment our cruisers moved into attack formation, the Vorthan ships reconfigured to exploit the exact weaknesses of that formation. It's like they had our tactical manual memorized. That's exactly what they did, Alex realized. They've been fighting standardized defense force equipment for decades. They know every possible configuration, every tactical doctrine, every weakness in our standard designs. Luna was studying the flight patterns of destroyed Defense Force ships when something clicked. But they've never fought anything like us. Our ship doesn't follow any standard design. Our tactics can't be predicted because we're making them up as we go along. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system, the scene that greeted them was devastating. Debris from destroyed Defense Force ships drifted in massive clouds around the embattled station. The surviving ships of the Third Fleet were in full retreat, their formations broken and their commanders clearly out of options. The Vorthan attack force consisted of 15 heavy cruisers arranged in a formation that seemed designed to funnel retreating ships into killing zones. Their tactics were flawless, their execution perfect. Against any conventional opponent, they would have been unstoppable, but the Phoenix Rising wasn't conventional. "Maya, what do your weapon systems think about those ships?" Zara asked. Maya's displays lit up with targeting solutions that seemed to multiply by the second. The targeting matrix is excited. It's identifying weak points in their formation that I don't think they know exist. "Alex, can we approach without them detecting our capabilities?" The navigation array suggests a course that uses gravitational fields to mask our energy signature. We'll look like a piece of debris until we're right on top of them. "Luna, can you fly this thing like nothing they've ever seen?" Luna's grin was visible even from behind. "Just tell me what you need." What happened next would be analyzed in military academies for generations. The Phoenix Rising didn't charge into battle like a traditional warship. Instead, it flowed through space like liquid mercury, its hybrid systems allowing maneuvers that defied conventional physics. The Vorthan ships, configured to counter standard Defense Force tactics, found themselves facing something completely unpredictable. When they tried to target the Phoenix Rising, its Andromedan shields bent their weapons fire around the ship like light around a black hole. When they attempted to surround it, Luna executed flight patterns that no human pilot should have been able to survive. Maya's weapon systems didn't just fire at the enemy, they learned from each engagement, adapting their targeting algorithms in real time. Rico's power systems fed energy to whichever system needed it most, creating a ship that became more effective the longer the battle continued. "Impossible," transmitted one of the surviving Defense Force captains. One ship just took out an entire Vorthan battle group. But for the crew of the Phoenix Rising, it didn't feel impossible at all. It felt like everything they had built was finally working exactly as intended. The silence that followed the battle at Kepler Station was more deafening than the explosions that had preceded it. Where 15 Vorthan heavy cruisers had dominated the system just hours before, only debris fields remained. The Phoenix Rising drifted among the wreckage like a predator surveying its territory, its hybrid system still humming with barely contained energy. "Status report," Commander Zara Knox called out, though she could hardly believe what had just happened herself. "All systems functioning normally," Rico Martinez replied, his voice filled with wonder. "Actually, they're functioning better than normal. The ship's learning algorithms incorporated everything from the battle. We're literally more capable now than we were an hour ago." Luna Chang was running diagnostics on the flight systems, shaking her head in amazement. "The navigation array is already plotting improved maneuvers based on what we learned about Vorthan response patterns. It's like the ship enjoyed the fight." Maya Patel's weapons displays showed targeting efficiency ratings. That shouldn't have been possible. The weapon systems adapted to Vorthan shield frequencies during combat. If we faced them again tomorrow, we'd be even more effective. But the real shock came from the communications array. Messages were flooding in from across the galaxy as news of the battle spread faster than seemed physically possible. The first transmission was from Admiral Harrison, and his expression showed someone trying to process the impossible. "Commander Knox, we're showing 0 Vorthan ships remaining in the Kepler system. Please confirm your status and..." "How exactly? Did you accomplish this?" Before Zara could respond, more transmissions began arriving. Ship captains who had witnessed the battle, station commanders who had monitored the engagement, news correspondents who had somehow gotten hold of the combat recordings. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the defense ship Intrepid. I've been flying for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like what you just did. That ship of yours moved like it was alive." "Phoenix Rising, this is Kepler Station Control. On behalf of the 50,000 civilians you just saved, thank you. We thought we were all going to die today." "Commander Knox, this is Admiral Chun from Fleet Command. We need you to return to headquarters immediately for debriefing. The entire military leadership wants to know how one experimental ship accomplished what our entire Third Fleet couldn't." Within 6 hours, the story had reached every corner of civilized space. But like all great stories told and retold, it grew with each transmission. By the time it reached the outer colonies, the Phoenix Rising had single-handedly destroyed not 15 ships, but 50. By the time it reached the core worlds, the crew had somehow defeated the entire Vorthan Empire in one battle. "Listen to this," Alex Thompson said, monitoring news broadcasts from his navigation station. "According to Galactic News Network, we're mysterious heroes who emerged from the depths of space to save civilization itself. They're calling our ship a weapon, forged by the gods." "Gods?" Luna laughed. "If they only knew we built it with spare parts and determination." The truth was almost as incredible as the myths that were already forming around their victory. The Phoenix Rising hadn't just won the Battle of Kepler Station. It had done so in a way that fundamentally changed how everyone thought about space combat. Their hybrid technologies had created possibilities that military strategists were still trying to understand, but the most significant moment came when they received a direct transmission from the Vorthan Empire itself. Emperor Vash appeared. On their main screen, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked suspiciously like respect. "Commander of the vessel Phoenix Rising," he began formally. "In 300 years of expansion, the Vorthan Empire has never encountered a ship like yours. Our battle computers analyzed your combat performance and concluded that further conflict would be ... inadvisable." Zara found herself in the surreal position of accepting a surrender from an empire that had been winning the war just hours earlier. "The Vorthan Empire requests immediate cessation of hostilities and formal peace negotiations," Emperor Vash continued. We believe your vessel represents a new era in military technology, and we would prefer to face that era as allies rather than enemies. The journey back to Galactic Defense Force headquarters took 3 days, and each day brought new developments that none of them had anticipated. Defense contractors were offering enormous sums for access to their technology. Military academies wanted to study their tactics. Politicians were claiming credit for supporting their project. It's funny, Maya observed as they watched yet another news report about their sudden fame. 6 months ago, these same people treated us like we didn't exist. Now they're all acting like they believed in us from the beginning. That's politics, Zara replied. But what matters is what we do next. The real shock came when they arrived at headquarters and discovered that their old superior officers, the same ones who had exiled them to Outpost Delta 9, were now scrambling to take credit for their success. Admiral Morrison, who had personally signed their transfer orders, was giving interviews about his visionary leadership in developing unconventional warfare capabilities. With respect, Admiral, Zara said during their first official debriefing, you sent us to Delta 9 because you wanted us to disappear. You gave us broken equipment because you thought we deserved nothing better. Admiral Morrison's face turned an interesting shade of red, but before he could respond, Admiral Harrison intervened. Commander Knox raises an excellent point. The Phoenix Rising project succeeded not because of official support, but in spite of official opposition. Perhaps we should consider why our most innovative people end up being treated as problems to be solved rather than resources to be developed. The months that followed brought changes that rippled through the entire Galactic Defense Force. Zara found herself promoted to Admiral and placed in charge of a new Advanced Technology Development Division. Her first official act was to establish a program that actively sought out problem personnel, engineers who asked too many questions, pilots who broke too many rules, strategists who thought too far outside conventional wisdom. Rico Martinez became the head of Hybrid Systems Engineering, leading teams that began developing an entire new generation of ships based on Phoenix Rising technology. But each new vessel was unique, designed by crews who were encouraged to innovate rather than conform. Luna Xiang established the Advanced Flight Training Program, teaching pilots to work with ships that thought for themselves and adapted to changing conditions. Her motto became, "Don't fly the ship, dance with it." Maya Patel's adaptive weapon systems became the new standard for Defense Force armament, replacing static designs with systems that could evolve during combat. Alex Thompson founded the Predictive Navigation Institute, developing new ways of thinking about space travel that incorporated probability and intuition alongside traditional physics, but perhaps the most important change was cultural. The Phoenix Rising had proven that innovation came from diversity of thought, not uniformity of approach. The Defense Force began actively recruiting people who had been overlooked by traditional standards, former rebels, creative thinkers, individuals who saw problems as opportunities rather than obstacles. You know what I realized? Zara said. One evening, as she stood on the bridge of the Phoenix Rising, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed quite so vast. They didn't give us junk, they gave us freedom. Freedom from expectations, freedom from regulations, freedom to fail and try again. She turned to look at her crew, her family, who had followed her from disgrace to legend. And sometimes when you give innovative people the freedom to build something extraordinary, they'll use whatever materials they have to change the entire galaxy. The Phoenix Rising had become more than just a ship. It had become proof that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't advanced technology or superior firepower. It was the refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. The alarm bells screamed through the communication station on Kepler 442 be like angry hornets. Captain Elena Vasquez grabbed her coffee mug before it could fall off her desk as the emergency signal jolted her awake. She had been dozing in her chair again, something she'd been doing more often since turning 50. The life of a patrol captain in the Outer Rim wasn't exactly thrilling most days. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Torres from the communication array. His voice carried that edge that meant trouble was coming their way. Elena walked over to his station, her boots clicking against the metal floor of the small outpost. "What have we got, Torres?" The young lieutenant's face was pale as he handed her the transmission pad. "Distress signals, ma'am. Lots of them. From the Rigel system, the Proxima colonies, even the mining stations near Volf 359. Elena frowned as she scrolled through the messages. Each one told the same terrifying story. Ships appearing out of nowhere. Massive crystalline vessels that looked nothing like any human technology. Demands for immediate surrender, and then ... silence. "How many systems?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. 47 confirmed, Captain, all within the last 3 months. Elena felt her stomach drop. 47 systems. That meant millions of people, entire worlds, just ... not destroyed, according to the reports, but conquered. Absorbed into something called the Hegemony Fleet. She walked to the window of the communication center and looked out at the peaceful farmlands of Kepler 442b. 3 million people called this place home. Farmers, mostly, growing food for the inner colonies. Families who had never seen a real war, who trusted that someone would protect them if danger ever came calling. "Get me a connection to the UES Defiant," she ordered. The Defiant wasn't much to look at. Elena knew that better than anyone. She was an old destroyer from the Expansion Wars, the kind of ship they built when humanity was still figuring out how to fight in space. Her weapons were outdated, her shields were patched more times than anyone wanted to count, and her crew quarters smelled like recycled air and broken dreams, but she was Elena's ship, and her crew was good. Really good. Chief Engineer Rodriguez met her at the airlock when she arrived. He was a short, stocky man with grease permanently embedded under his fingernails and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Captain, we've been monitoring those transmissions too," he said without preamble. "The crew's asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that start with, are we going to run, and end with, how fast can we go?" Elena nodded. It was a fair question. Fleet Command had issued evacuation orders for all civilian populations in the Outer Rim. Pack up, leave everything behind, and retreat toward the core worlds where the big ships and real weapons were waiting. "Gather everyone in the mess hall," she said. It's time they heard it from me. 20 minutes later, Elena stood before her crew of 847 men and women. They were a mixed bunch, veterans from the border conflicts. Young recruits looking for adventure, engineers who preferred fixing things to fighting, and medical staff who had signed up to help people, not watch them die. "I'm not going to lie to you," Elena began. "What's coming our way is bigger than anything we've ever faced. These hegemony ships, they're not like the pirates we usually deal with. They're not raiders looking for quick profit. They're conquerors." She paused, looking at the faces around her. Fear, yes, but also determination. These people had chosen to serve on the frontier, where life was hard and help was far away. "Fleet Command wants us to evacuate the colonists and fall back. Standard procedure when facing overwhelming force." A murmur ran through the room. That was what they expected to hear. "But there's a problem," Elena continued. "Our long-range sensors are picking up scout ships. Hegemony vessels already in the outer system. They've cut off the hyperspace routes," the murmur died. Everyone understood what that meant. No escape, no running. The 3 million people on the planet below were trapped. "So what do we do, Captain?" asked Petty Officer Kim, a young woman who ran the tactical systems. Elena took a deep breath. "We do our job. We protect those people down there no matter what it takes." The silence that followed was heavy. Elena could see her crew processing the implications. They all knew the numbers. One aging destroyer against a fleet that had conquered 47 systems. It wasn't a battle. It was a death sentence. "I won't order anyone to stay," Elena said, quietly. "Anyone who wants to take a shuttle and try to make it to the inner systems, I understand. No one will think less of you." She waited and waited. Not a single person moved. Finally, Rodriguez stood up. "With respect, Captain, where exactly would we go? These things are heading for the core worlds anyway. At least here, we can make a difference." A chorus of agreement rippled through the room. Elena felt a surge of pride that almost brought tears to her eyes. "All right then," she said. "Let's get to work." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Rodriguez and his engineering team worked to squeeze every bit of power they could from the ship's aging systems. The fusion reactors hadn't been designed for combat stress, but they'd have to do. Kim ran simulation after simulation, trying to find some tactical advantage they could exploit. The results were always the same. The Defiant would be destroyed within minutes of engaging the hegemony fleet. But she kept looking, kept trying different approaches. Meanwhile, Elena found herself staring at the tactical display, watching the scout ships patrol the edges of the system. They moved with mechanical precision, cutting off escape route after escape route. Whatever was coming, it was patient. "Methodical, Captain," called Torres from the communication station. "We're getting transmissions from the planet. They want to know what's happening." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. "How do you tell 3 million people that death is coming and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it?" "Tell them we're monitoring the situation," she said finally. "Tell them the Defiant is here and we're not going anywhere." It wasn't much of a comfort, but it was all she had to offer. As the hours passed, more reports came in from the advancing hegemony fleet. The descriptions were always the same: massive ships that seemed to be made of living crystal, moving through space like predators stalking prey. They didn't negotiate. They didn't explain their demands. They simply arrived, declared their intention to add another world to their empire, and waited for surrender. Those who resisted were crushed. Those who surrendered were absorbed. Their technology, their resources, their very culture became part of the hegemony. It was conquest on a scale humanity had never imagined. Elena found herself thinking about her grandmother, who had fought in the Earth Wars decades ago. The old woman used to tell stories about impossible odds and desperate stands, about how sometimes the only choice was to plant your feet and refuse to move, no matter what was coming. Sometimes, her grandmother had said, someone has to be the wall that breaks the wave. As night fell over Kepler 442b, Elena stood on the bridge of the Defiant and made her choice. They couldn't win. They probably couldn't even slow the enemy down, but they could stand. They could show the universe that humanity didn't kneel easily. "Rodriguez," she called over the intercom, "how are those engines looking?" "Ready to give." "You everything we've got, Captain?" "Kim, weapon status?" "All systems green. Not that it'll matter much." Elena smiled grimly. "It'll matter. Trust me, it'll matter." Outside the viewport, the stars looked peaceful. But Elena knew that somewhere out there, death was coming. And when it arrived, it would find the UES Defiant waiting,